PXG are back with 3 brand new irons for 2024. So what are the differences and which ones should you be putting in play? Let's go find out. So 3 irons from PXG, and they kind of sit in 2 separate categories. We've got the new Gen 7 which come in to replace the Gen 6. Again, we've got kind of the P and the XP in that, which is the players and the more players distance model. And then we've got something brand new, and that is PXG's first ever game improvement iron in the Black Ops, which goes to match the rest of the range in terms of their drivers, their woods and their hybrids, which I think makes sense because that's what we see a lot of other brands do, have like a game improvement iron that flows into that main range. Now, although there's quite a lot of differences in terms of shaping, size, who these are aimed at, actually there's a lot of shared technologies through the range. So what we're going to do is going to hit all 3 through the bag, 9 iron, 7 iron, 5 iron, see the difference in terms of launch, distance, control on the greens, and just look at where the technologies are shared and where they're different and which one might suit your game the best. So first off, we're going to start here short range with 9 iron. I'm going to go for the Gen 7 0311P, which is like the most player style club. This is what you'd class as like a player's distance club. If I was going to compare it to something, maybe the most recently I've reviewed as the TaylorMade irons, I'd probably put this in like a P770 category. Very similar to that in terms of type and shape and sizing. So visually you might have noticed the big change here is in this weight on the back of the club head. It's no longer black, and that's because we've got a material change here. PXG have moved to titanium. It's a lot lighter, and that means they can displace the weight from the middle of the club head to the edges, which is going to drive that MOI, give you more forgiveness, because the more weight you have on the outside of the club, the more forgiving it's going to be when you don't hit out the middle. Now, what I like in terms of the shaping here over the ball is there's quite minimal offset on this, and I think for a players club that's quite important. I personally hate to see the ball go left, so that's a big win for me. And at this point the top line isn't too thick. We'll see what that does as we move through the set. Okay, I wouldn't say I struck that my best, but actually it had a pretty nice high ball flight, to say so, and it spun over 8,000, which with a 9 iron is definitely a lot, especially with this much tech in it. I wouldn't have necessarily expected that much spin. Flew up at just over 70 feet, perhaps not the best, probably could have got a little bit more depending on strike, but I think in general those are pretty good numbers to start with, and actually I'd be really happy with that amount of spin and land angle that's coming down at 44.7 degrees. That's going to get me really good stopping power and control on the greens. Right, let's move to the XP and see the differences. While you're here, it would be really amazing if you could hit that subscribe button. Over 75% of people who watch my channel aren't actually subscribed, and it makes a massive difference in terms of what opportunities we have, what content we can film and bring to you going forward. So if you could hit that subscribe button, maybe even drop a like and a comment about what you'd like to see on the channel, that would be great. Right, back to the video. You can see how the sole kind of jumps up in size here. And that's also reflected in other things such as the top line and the blade length. Although actually at this point the top line doesn't look excessively too much thicker. And there's not loads more offset, which is pretty good. So this is what PXG are classing as a player's distance iron. They say it's aimed at mid to high handicappers, and compared to the P, which is designed to give a balance of distance and forgiveness, the XP is designed to give maximum distance and maximum forgiveness. The XP stands for extreme performance, so I would expect to see more distance here, more height, and hopefully some help on misstrikes. Okay, that definitely flew higher. I mean, it's nearly gone in the hole, so wins on that. Actually pretty similar in terms of carry. Fins dropped down quite a lot, which I would expect with this kind of head with more tech in it. But the height has jumped up to 86 feet and the land angle is 48.8. So if you're someone who needs to get more launch on your shots and you want it to get landed steeper into the green, this is definitely going to work. Now I suspect I'll see probably more distance between the different models as we move through the bag. Typically you don't always see loads at the bottom end, but it's interesting to see the difference in terms of flight there. Okay, last up, Black Ops. This is different in terms of the fact that this is a dual cavity design, so it's hollow inside this in 2 different places, and it's not forged like we see with the Gen 7 range. So there could be a difference in terms of feel here. Now you can see this is much bigger everywhere in terms of kind of sole, top line. It's just meant for like maximum forgiveness, ease of use. This is actually 4.7% larger than the XP, if that means anything to you at all. Actually sounded a lot more muted than I expected it to. I thought it would be much harsher off the face to say the different construction, but that wasn't the case. Ball speed was actually my quickest yet, first one in the hundreds, but it's still gone 127. That spun 7,904 RPM. Definitely wasn't expecting that. Height up at 76 feet, so a bit in between the last 2. Land angle, the steepest of the lot, 49.5. So again, getting that stopping power on the green is going to be really easy, although usually you need that because the spin's not as high with these clubs, but that's been freakishly high compared to what I would have expected. Let's go hit some of the longer irons. Okay, 7-iron, it's going to be interesting to see the jump and the changes in distance here. Now, PXG are saying these are their fastest irons ever, and that's because they've got an extremely thin club face, but then also some new proprietary polymer inside the club head. In fact, this club face is 1.27 millimeters thin at its thinnest, which is pretty insane. Now, to support that, they have something called an X-Core 2, which is that lightweight polymer that sits inside the club head of all 3 models that we have here, that supports the club face to 1, stop it from breaking because it's pretty thin, but 2, help it flex and then deliver that ball speed that we all want. You can definitely see the blade length gets longer here as we move up the irons. Again, I've got the P first. I mean, I really need to work on my aim, but I did actually hit that quite nicely. 149.7 in terms of carry. We are uphill and a bit into the wind here, so that's going to affect the numbers slightly. Height, I'm pretty happy with that. 78.6 has stayed pretty near what we saw with 9-iron, which sometimes as you move through the set, you can start to see that dip. You actually want it to be consistent through the set, ideally. So that's a good tip if you're going for fittings or looking at different irons and when you should combo set. Make sure you're keeping those heights the same through the set. Land angle 44.5, so that's going to be really good in terms of control. Spin's probably dropped a little from what we saw in 9-iron, down to 5,900, but still pretty good and very manageable. Now, what's quite interesting with PXG irons compared to some other companies is they always get the CG in the centre of the club. So because the hosel is very big, provides a lot of weight in the heel, they have to put quite a big toe weight in. Now, a lot of manufacturers will have this slightly off centre, and often it's slightly towards the heel. But actually PXG want this perfectly matched up in the centre, so you know if you get a centre strike that the majority of the weight is behind that. It's going to give you the best and the most efficient shot. That definitely felt faster. I feel like it might have come off a bit lower though. Okay, so it carried 151.6, definitely a little bit longer. Weirdly, the spin was higher, 6,500, but the land angle not as steep there, 39.9. I think probably some of that came down to the strike though. Right, last up, Black Ops. That felt fast and it launched very high and I pushed it into the bunker. Okay, so definitely the longest, 155.7, spin still pretty good, 5,500, land angle 42.6, so you're going to get good control with that height up at 75. Interesting to see it actually kind of did what it said on the tin there, so the P was the shortest, the XP was then a little bit longer, and the Black Ops was then the longest. Although in terms of height, it's kind of moving a bit through the range, which is probably not what I would have expected. I would have expected it to be more kind of linear. Let's see if that changed in the 5-iron, where definitely I and most people need a little more help in terms of that height. Now, the Gen 7 irons are actually 5 times forged, but there is obviously tungsten in the head, there's that polymer, and I have to say this feels surprisingly soft when you think about the amount of tech in the club head. Definitely one of the softer feeling kind of players and players distance irons on the market, I would say. 5-iron time. This is where we need all that tech. I feel like I've hit that one the best out of all of them clubs so far. Why on earth would I be able to hit a 5-iron better than a 9-iron? It literally makes no sense. So that's carried 168 yards, spin 4,500, height up at 70. So again, same fairly consistent through the set. I've been in like the 70s with each club with the P, which I like. Land angle 39.4, perhaps a tad on the low side, but not too bad. But actually what I would say is over the ball, these feel like a really nice, comfortable shape, which I think is quite important when you get to long irons. You want something that fills you with confidence and feels like you don't have to hit a perfect shot for it to kind of go where you want it to go. Felt pretty easy to hit and I really liked how it launched and the ball flight looked really good to me. I'll be interested to see what the differences are at this top bit, because this would be definitely where people would be looking to maybe combo set, move up, get more ball speed. XP. You know what, that felt fast, sounded fast, and looked like it went higher. It did sound really nice. I would say for like the I would say for like the size of these, they sound and feel remarkably good. So that's carried 169. I've gained 1 whole yard. Height, interestingly, was lower, which is not necessarily what it looked like. 65.9, land angle 38.4. Shows you why sometimes you should rely on the numbers and not just look at the shot. But the spin rate was 5,000, so actually a little bit more. It's interesting, I've seen more spin with the XP in both the 7 and the 5-iron, which is not what I would have expected to happen. Right, last up, Black Ops. It should basically just hit the green for me if the tech It's anything to go by. Tad skinny. Don't think it's going to quite get up with the others. Yeah, 161.7. Spin rate still 5.6 though, which on a low of centre strike isn't bad. And the height 60. Land angle 37.4. Okay, so we've hit all 3 models through the bag, and the point of this video is to try and help you decide which one of these you should put in play if you're looking for a new set and if you're particularly interested in these irons. Now, what I'd say probably I'm most impressed with this year is kind of the sound and the feel, but actually the forgiveness. I've hit some shots that have like kind of nearly missed the grooves here on the toe, and they have gone really straight. So if you want some confidence that these are going to be forgiving and help you out on the golf course, hopefully that helps out. Now, in terms of picking out a model for each individual type of golfer or for you specifically, there's a few kind of benchmarks that PXG have laid out. So they've said for the P, they would say that's a low to mid handicapper. They've said for the XP, that's like a mid to high handicapper. And then your game improvement is for like your newer golfers or your highest handicap golfers. Now, I think it's really hard to just take people and put them into those specific categories because actually a lot of people will hit different clubs better. So it might be a high handicapper strikes it really well with the Ps, and someone else is a low handicapper, but maybe they're older, they're a senior player, and they want that extra height that something like the Black Ops can provide. So I wouldn't necessarily think of putting yourself into a model based on just your handicap alone. I've definitely seen here as I've gone through, the XP and the Black Ops are a lot easier to hit and kind of get going where you want to than the P model. So I do think in terms of ball striking, if you're pretty happy with that, I would go P. If you think you need a little bit more help, I would move up into these XP or Black Ops models. It was pretty interesting in terms of the data because actually my spin was quite variable, and I think the XP was the one that consistently spun the highest. So maybe something to look at if you're someone who wants to stop the ball quicker on the greens. Obviously it's going to give you a little bit more height than the P is generally. I think the big thing to take away here is actually you need to go and get fit and hit all these irons because everyone presents the club differently. Even looking at a different visual can change how you present the club at impact. You shouldn't necessarily just pick one based on someone saying this goes really high. PXG also have one of the most in-depth fitting processes I have ever been on, including like loads of swing weighting in the back of the club heads, which is pretty unique, loads of shaft options. They don't even have like a stock shaft in their like media information because they just have a massive lineup you can choose from. Overall, really impressed with the iron lineup here. Pretty exciting to have a new game improvement iron from PXG. So let me know if you're going to be testing that out because it's pretty damn forgiving. So you probably want to give it a try.